Now, the global illegal trade of wildlife animals is one of the most profitable criminal enterprises, believed to be worth up to $23 billion a year. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is very likely to have originated from zoonotic sources, conversations around a global strategy to end the illegal trade have been amplified both by governments and international organizations. This is a problem that Nigeria is currently sitting at the center of. Did you know that more than half of all seizures of pangolin scales worldwide in 2019 could be traced back to Nigeria? And according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, data suggests an increasing role of Nigeria in the illicit ivory trade. Now, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Catriona Laing, recently spoke to Arise Correspondent Laila Johnson-Salami on UK's commitment to tackling the illegal wildlife trade and conserving biodiversity in the country.
The illegal wildlife trade is one of the largest transnational crimes, worth up to $23 billion a year. And Nigeria is not only a source for wildlife products, but also a major transit hub. Yet, conserving wildlife is actually of more value. Globally, wildlife tourism is worth 5 times more in generated revenue than the illegal trade. I spoke to the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Mrs. Catriona Laing, who believes that a global strategy to end the trade has become more necessary than ever in a pandemic era.
Now, the prevalence and, of course, illegal trade of wildlife animals across the globe is something that we are seeing far more governments and international organizations paying attention to in a post or in a pandemic era. Why is this topic particularly important to you?
So I think one of the reasons is, as you mentioned, the pandemic. I think, as you know, there's a lot of speculation that the coronavirus itself originated through a zoonotic disease. And that comes about because of deforestation, people's loss of biodiversity. So that's one of the reasons we have to care about the illegal wildlife trade, because it links directly to our own personal health. The more forests go, the more likely we are to see future zoonotic diseases. But secondly, this is a huge illegal trade. Organised criminal networks are making billions out of the illegal wildlife trade. And in some cases, we've seen evidence that this is fueling insurgencies, potentially even in Nigeria itself. And thirdly, of course, that we just care about these creatures for future generations. I would like to feel happy and confident that my daughter, her daughter, will be able to see these wonderful creatures and not just read about them in books or see them on films.
And has the UK government always been this interested in ending the illegal wildlife trade, or is this a sudden interest here in Nigeria?
This government is fully committed, and of course we're hosting COP26 this year, and one of the big themes of COP26 is nature-based solutions, finding solutions both to mitigation and to adaptation. And Nigeria is a really good example of this, because 2/3 of your carbon emissions come from deforestation and illegal land use, which of course itself is leading to the problems of biodiversity. So what we're trying to do is help Nigeria think through holistic solutions that will both deal with carbon emissions, but also help you adapt for climate change and preserve people's livelihoods, as well as conservation of animals, so joining it all up.
At the recently concluded G7 summit in Cornwall, leaders of the group committed to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030, and also tackle deforestation, marine litter, and the illegal wildlife trade. I spoke to Mrs. Laing on plans to continue this conversation, as the UK will host the UN Climate Change Conference COP26 in Glasgow this November.
The illegal trade of wildlife animals, is this a topic of conversation on the table at COP26 this year?
So I think through the nature-based solutions, what we're trying to shine a spotlight on is to give people additional reasons to care, as you asked in your first question. So, and also for people to see that there is value from wildlife in preserving it rather than in eating it or taking its scales and selling them. So I'm really glad that some of the work we're doing here is thinking about it from that perspective. So livelihoods have to come into this, as well as, I think, education. And this is what's so good about this centre here, is that children are learning, the sooner you learn, the better, that these are part of your environment and it's part of your responsibility to ensure that these wonderful creatures exist for you and for your children and your children's children.
Now, one of the main goals of the summit is, of course, to mobilize funds for climate change. How specifically is the UK supporting Nigeria's efforts to end the illegal wildlife trade?
Well, on that global target that you quite rightly mentioned, which is a very clear commitment and an essential commitment, because I think if we're going to bring developing countries with us, and that's one of their big asks, you want us to preserve our wildlife, you want to preserve our forests, to transition to renewables, it costs money. And we're with you, but you need to commit. So that I think it's 110 billion actually, is a very clear commitment. The UK has already made a commitment of 11.5 billion, and we're on track to deliver that. And in Nigeria, I'm actually just working on a big bid that we're going to be putting in to that fund to work on exactly what I mentioned before, a very big program which is going to try and link sustainable agriculture with deforestation, with illegal wildlife. So it's exactly that point. So I'm hoping we'll be successful in securing some of that 11.5 billion for Nigeria itself, and we're talking about a large program that will be sort of multi-million program over many years. At the same time, there's lots of smaller initiatives like supporting this centre, for example, supporting PhD students who are working on understanding the illegal wildlife trade. And then thirdly, on the law enforcement side, as I mentioned, we've set up a really good working relationship with the Controller General of Customs, with our American colleagues and our German colleagues, so also very big donors in this area of the illegal wildlife trade. So we're working together, supporting the law enforcement side. So we're coming at it from all different angles.
And a lot of people often wonder why should we care about wildlife? To you, why do you think the public needs to start caring more about conserving wildlife?
If you conserve your forests, not only do you reduce your carbon dioxide emissions, you also create livelihoods for people. That rich forest creates livelihood opportunities and ensures we protect biodiversity for the benefit of our future generations.
Mrs. Catriona, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you.
We're now being joined by Arise Special Correspondent Laila Johnson-Salami for further insight into that great interview. I'm excited for you since the pangolin documentary. Yeah. How does it feel to be at the forefront of what looks like a developing situation, hopefully for the better?
Honestly speaking, I'm so glad that this is an area that I took interest in, because what I have seen and the potential if we start to change things around here is huge. Now, the first thing that people normally think when they see a report like this is, come on, we have way bigger issues to face. People can't even eat, and we're talking about conserving wildlife animals. And that's a fact. That is a fact, right? So we can't even actually tackle these issues that we're talking about until we get to the base of tackling poverty, etc., and bringing people up in terms of human development. However, what we do need to understand is this. We have a lot of wildlife here in Nigeria. We have elephants, we have pangolins, we have lions, we have the cross-river gorillas, a lot of wildlife here in Nigeria. The criminal networks set up generate up to $23 billion a year. If we conserve our wildlife and we go into animal tourism, we are looking at tapping into an industry that's worth 5 times more that, $120 billion a year. We can employ people, give people better livings, etc. So there are solutions here, you know, to getting around this problem. And like I said, I think the potential here is huge.
Well, should I add that Laila herself has had to save a pangolin? I remember that special report. Yes. So you had to go all the way to save a pangolin. But tell us, you know, those figures are whooping, Laila. You say $23 million.
Billion.
Billion dollars.
It's a $1 billion industry.
That's huge. So what is the problem here? Is it that there's not enough awareness? Or is it that we're just plain dumb? What exactly is going on? And this is crossing across all levels. The governments, the people. What's going on? But you respond to me after the break, Laila.
Sure thing.
Hold on to your thoughts. News will be right back after this break. Glad to have you back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Newsday here on the Arise News channel. And we still have with us Arise Special Correspondent Laila Johnson-Salami, who's taking a look at the illegal wildlife trade. Pangolins in particular for me, because as I was saying before that break, you've had to save pangolins. Kudos to you. But my question again, just to reiterate, there's a lot of money to be made here on either side. If you look at it illegally, they're making whooping sums of money, but you're saying we can turn this around and make it into tourism.
Yep.
And there's a lot of money to be made as well. So
5 times more.
5 times more. So what's the problem? Are we unaware or we're just plain dumb?
I think it's a bit of everything here. First of all, like Mrs. Laing pointed out in that interview, the British High Commissioner, we need to start enforcing our laws. That's number one, because we do actually have laws in place here in Nigeria to protect certain endangered species, but we are not enforcing those laws. That's number one. Number two is it's the education aspect of it, Adesua. We need to start taking this seriously and educating the public. Are you both aware of Igboefon in Lekki,
yes,
the area?
I do. Yes.
Directly translated from Yoruba to English, Igboefon means home of the buffaloes, I believe. Up to 30 years ago, that place was apparently full of water buffaloes. Today, they are completely extinct. So we need to start taking this seriously. We have about 200 to 300 cross-river gorillas left. They're one of 4 subspecies of gorillas. If we turn this around, we create wildlife parks that people can go to, stay on the weekend. We employ Nigerians. I believe over 3 million people are currently employed on the African continent in wildlife. There is so much money to be made. So much more money than is currently being made by organized criminal networks on the trade, and we have to specify the trade between Asia and Africa. Okay. That is where we have to specify, because that is what is really going on here.
And then even as you said, when we were speaking before the live interview here, that it has a shelf life anyway, because they've died out. The reason they're here in Nigeria is because the ones they're purchasing in Asia are dying, are completely going, or they're completely gone. But I want to speak to the broader issues that the British High Commissioner was referencing. She talked of 2/3 of our carbon emissions coming from deforestation. So their involvement goes beyond wildlife. Can you tell us how much are they really? You were asking her in specific terms. How much are they planning to invest? What's their program? What's their agenda?
So this is the interesting thing ahead of COP26. Obviously, the UK government and other governments around the world since the G7 summits and prior have sort of been paying a lot of attention to climate change. Now, what we're looking at here is climate financing. Since 2009, developed countries committed to a goal to finance developing countries with $100 billion a year in climate finance every year until 2020. Obviously, we're in 2021 now, which is why Mrs. Laing was speaking on the fact that the UK government has made an extra commitment of 11.5 billion. Now, we need to look at climate financing and we need to ask the right questions. Is the money going to the right places? I was speaking in a conference this morning, and a member of the Red Cross was saying that only 3% of the climate finance that we've seen since 2009 in credit has really actually come to developing countries. So we need to look at the structure. We need to look at the structure, right, of climate financing, and we need to ensure that climate financing is actually helping us here to reduce our carbon emissions, to protect our wildlife, and we're feeling the effects right here in Nigeria. And I think that that's why it's important that the British High Commission here in Nigeria is pushing on that strongly and trying to take a lead to ensure that Nigeria does secure some of that money so that we can help to protect our wildlife.
Thank you very much, Laila. Unfortunately, that's the much we can take. And as far as this pandemic is concerned, we've not been able to rule out the role of wildlife and illegal trade in all of it. But a conversation that continues definitely.
Possibly the pangolin, Adesua. Possibly the pangolin.
Possibly. And we need to save more. We need to save more. Thank you so much, Laila Johnson-Salami, for being on Newsday.
Thank you.